gentlemen, to another episode of the Bobo, Mango, and Donovan Void. We are here at the beach, and today we want to talk about selfishness. We want to get a little existential. We were watching a very interesting video yesterday, comparing and contrasting what is a better life and what is more valuable to society, selfishness or selflessness. I want to start with a theory that I learned about, I think, a year ago. But I saw it in a documentary that I was watching about monkeys. Different types of monkeys exist in different climates. And the climate in which a monkey exists in determines the extent to which they will be collectivist and the extent to which they will be individualistic.
Right.
And what they found is that monkeys that exist in climates with abundance are very, very collectivist.
Right.
They're happier.
Yeah.
They hug each other. They also found that they share more intimacy. They're more affectionate with each other.
They be
kiss
fucking?
each other, but they fuck a lot.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Monkeys where there's just so many bananas.
Yeah.
There's just so much food. There's so many resources.
Yeah.
They don't really have to compete with each other for resources. They just do tend to be more collectivist. Monkeys that exist in climates where there's just not that much resources.
Gets a little shiesty.
It gets
It's a little grimy.
They have very different personalities.
I could see that.
They're very individualistic.
Yeah.
They are very unaffectionate.
Mm.
They tend towards selfishness a lot more. They are more violent. They fight more because they have to compete for resources. So therefore, these genes are just epigenetically passed down for even when those monkeys move, they continue on with those genes. For example, if there's a drought and there's no water in that area, and then the monkeys have to migrate, they still have those tendencies. And I thought that was really interesting because I'm South African, and I was born in and am part of a culture that exists in one of the most abundant climates in the world.
Yeah.
We have just naturally.
Yeah.
We have so much food.
Yeah.
We have so much sun.
Yeah.
We have so much beauty. Just the natural environment and climate here just favors humanity. And that informs why South Africans, or Southern Africans generally, because Zimbabwe is the same, Botswana is the same, et cetera, why us Southern Africans tend to be more collectivist.
Right.
When you move to other areas of the world,
Yeah, the niggas who left.
the people who move more west too, the more, we see that there are climates in which there are less natural resources. Those cultures just tend more towards selfishness. And I want to preface this conversation by saying that I don't think that there's actually a moral incentive for why different cultures tend towards one side more than the other. I think it's entirely environmental. And now that we're here, I can see why selfishness, not entirely, not like Ted Bundy, but I can see why tending towards selfishness could be the more utilitarian way of existing. But what do you think?
I think it's really interesting because, I'm someone who also naturally associates like selflessness with godliness, with just doing the right thing inherently.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that we don't talk about enough is the dark side. There's a level of selflessness that basically just accommodates to anyone in the room, right?
Right.
So if I have a friend and I'm hanging out with another friend and that friend is talking shit about my initial friend, a very, very selfless person, in order to not cause any trouble, in order to not make anyone uncomfortable, will naturally be like, yeah, he's like that, and then they'll also go and hang out with that same person that was just being talked shit about and say the same thing. So there's a level of just being accommodating to anything, making yourself small, that we associate with morality, but it really is just cowardice.
Right.
And there's just a level of selflessness that is really sort of just kind of this benign narcissism, or maybe this actual just fear of being confrontational. which is not a positive trait.
Interesting.
Putting others before yourself is inherently positive, but kind of, well, we'll
That's
talk
what
about
I want
that.
to question.
Right.
Okay.
But hiding behind others, being accommodating of anyone, like, so you hang out with a bunch of Nazis and then you sit there like, no, I understand. What the fuck is that? You know what I mean? So there's a level of being selfless that actually becomes negative. And I think because we live in a world that we presume was entirely destroyed by selfish people, we don't really think about the ways that quote unquote selfless people also corrode society.
Interesting.
Another thing I think about selfless people is that if you're always putting other people before yourself, which is something that I really struggle with, it's my innate knee-jerk reaction, you will inherently never become the best version of yourself, and therefore you'll never be as useful as you could be to society because you've always been minimizing yourself, shrinking yourself, putting anyone and everyone's needs before your own. And I think as a generation, maybe reacting to how much selfish, narcissistic people have destroyed the world, we inherently just associate selflessness as the way to be. But I'm not quite sure that's the full story. I think the real story is that you have to be selfish enough to become the best version of yourself, but then selfless enough to actually use that for other people. Let's think about the fully selfless person, which doesn't exist. They don't wash, they don't eat, they don't take care of themselves. They don't do basic things that you need to survive. Basic things that you need to take care of your physical and mental health in order to show up for other people. And I think that it is going to be a hot take. Maybe people might be mad about this, but some of the most resentful, spiteful people, bitter people I've ever met have been the most selfless. And something about constantly putting others before yourself day after day after day inherently makes you a resentful asshole because you've actually never been doing anything for yourself. And that's actually perfectly natural, you know? And I've fallen into that. I'm actually dragging myself here. I've been so selfless in every single part of my life that I found myself just being resentful and so fucking mad at people that actually did nothing wrong to me. I want to share like a personal example.
I was gonna ask, please share an example.
So at the height of my music career, like I put out a song, it starts blowing up immediately. I get approached by this person that works for a streaming service, and this is my like golden opportunity, right? They're really excited about my music. They're really invested in my career and just like me as a person. And we're like, all right, we're about to work together. Mind you, in music, you really only get one window, right? When you pop and you have all this attention on you, you really got to optimize that moment because you might not get it again. So I decide to go with this person. We're locked in. We sign a contract. A month later, that person gets cancer. And listen, I am a feeling, empathetic, decent human being. I know that my music career does not matter compared in relation to someone getting a potentially life-ending diagnosis. So I inherently just showed up for that person as a friend. I helped them through chemo. I helped them mentally navigate the situation. And I never brought up the fact that, hey, my music career is kind of just completely fallen to the wayside. And hey, this is my life as well too. And I felt insane asking them to work with other people while they had cancer. Because listen, they have cancer and you don't want to like break bad news to someone who's going through something awful. And I felt like, sorry.
For those of us who aren't so familiar with how the music industry works, you had a non-compete clause in this contract.
I did
so
it.
That meant you couldn't work with other streaming services or labels or other.
It's rude. It's very rude. And it's an especially rude thing to maybe drop on someone as soon as they get out of chemo. You know? So inherently, I sacrificed my music career to maintain my friendship with this person. But at the end, my resent from sacrificing my career in order to maintain this friendship actually sabotaged the friendship in the end. And in hindsight, I look back and if I go, okay, if I was selfish enough to say, hey, I'd actually like to pursue management and help from these other people. I would still like to show up for you as a friend though. But as far as our work relationship, I can't miss this opportunity in life. We would have still been friends. I would have been able to actually take advantage of this once in a lifetime opportunity and everything would have worked out better. If I was inherently a little more selfish, if I was inherently enough of an asshole to maybe call someone up after a round of chemo and go, hey, yo fam, I don't know, I'm under new management. That sounded crazy to me at the time. I was not raised that way. I was not, but me being the way I am, me being this naturally selfless, extremely empathetic person, ruined everything. Sometimes trying to save everything
now you don't have
everything.
the career that you're pursuing, and you don't have the friendship.
Exactly.
Friendship.
Exactly.
Question though, I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Yeah.
Okay. I am also someone that tends towards selflessness. I think a little less than you though. I'm a little bit more of an asshole. But you know, it's funny in that story.
Yeah.
I actually don't think it would have been selfish for you to tell her that you're pursuing new management.
Yeah.
And maybe there's like nuances about the music industry that I don't understand.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, if I am your manager and now we're friends, as your friend who has cancer, I also want the best for you. And then I also know that I don't have the range to be your manager.
Right.
So the only thing that would make sense for both of us is for you to relieve me of the work of managing you and for you to get like other management or go get. So I think something that, you know, people pleasers tend to do is to make assumptions on behalf of other people. And there's something arrogant, and I'm dragging myself.
That's the banal narcissism. That's that quiet narcissism.
Yeah.
You're right. You're making assumptions for other people.
You first of all made the assumption on behalf of this other person.
Yeah.
That they need you.
Right.
And without you as a client, they would be nothing.
Right.
Or they would have nothing.
No, drag me.
You know?
Yeah.
And so that's the first assumption that I'd want to question, which is that, you know, this person had a career before you.
Right.
They had a career before they had cancer. They had a career before they met you.
Yeah.
And they will have a career after they have cancer. And they will have, you know?
Yeah.
Because now that your friendship has ended.
Yeah.
And they're in remission.
Yeah.
They still have that job, but you don't.
But I don't, exactly.
They moved up, but you don't. So making assumptions on behalf of other people is a core tenet. And I'm really actually dragging because I do this a lot.
Yeah.
Making assumptions on behalf of other people when you don't want to hurt them or slight them, has the underlying assumption that you are more important. It has a somewhat like self-aggrandizing assumption.
Absolutely.
And then it also has an assumption that other people are like you.
Yeah.
And that's something that all human, whether you're a people pleaser or not.
Yeah.
We all, you know, it's like the brain in a box the beetle in a box analogy. We all tend towards the assumption that everyone else is like us, and that is one of the biggest psychological fallacies.
Absolutely.
It's the assumption that, you know, your career is important to you. Her career might have just been a job.
Right.
To her, you know, like you were just another client.
Yeah.
But like her career is just 10% of her life. To you, you know, maybe you're 16.
Yeah.
You're trying to get out the hood.
It was everything to me.
You.
Yeah.
You know, and so you project your assumption of what this thing means to you on someone else.
Yeah.
Which is why setting boundaries is really always such a good idea.
Right.
Because you actually never know what something means to someone else. Something might mean the world to you, but really mean nothing to me. You know, it's like we were talking about this the other day. Like, careers and jobs for me are just like a logistical chore.
Yeah.
But for you, it's really something that you find meaning and fulfillment in, and like, you know, it's like a deeply existential thing. Yeah. And so, you know, I also tend towards the assumption that, like, you know, when someone is coming to work, it's just a job. You know, when I go to a doctor's office, I assume, like, you know what, I'm just another number to this doctor. But maybe I'm not. Maybe this is their life's work. Maybe, you know, curing people of PCOS is a doctor's greatest passion, and, you know, so I think one of the reasons we really fuck ourselves as people pleasers or selfless people is because that state of existence comes with so many assumptions that are so harmful.
I think the biggest assumption, beyond assuming what other people think, is assuming that you know what you even want. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we make in life. Because people always talk about selflessness or selfishness or self-care. And I know this might sound like a head-ass, like Jordan Peterson-ass thing, but like, what is the self? Let's first start with self. Because within all of us, there are a bunch of entities struggling to define themselves as like I, as like me, as the self. People are lovers, but then they're also career focused, and then they're also traumatized children, and then they're also sexual beings. And all of these things fight inside of us for the ability to be in the driver's seat.
Yes.
And I think what really sucks about the way that we've structured society, it could be capitalism, monogamy, is only one version of you gets to define itself as me, as I, as the main person in the driver's seat.
Yeah, yeah.
And that forces us to throw all of those other personalities into the backseat. And when you kind of throw something away for a while, it sort of metastasizes into this beast that just can't be controlled. And then beasts just go out and cause so much damage. They just cause so much chaos.
Yeah.
And I think that that is inherently the downfall of making these assumptions, both about other people and about yourself. So I think, yeah, even in entering relationships, people assume that they know what they want. And I was talking to a friend who, they're in their 50s and they're still single. Yeah. And they don't care. Like, they've given up on love entirely.
Wow.
And I was asking them why. And they said something that was kind of profound. And they said that whenever I'm in a relationship, my partner's favorite version of me is never my favorite version of myself. And that causes an incompatibility.
Interesting.
And I think that's sort of another way of describing that feeling of multiple versions of ourselves fighting to become the main
power.
Yeah. And I think that that's another thing that sort of gets lost in communication, because there's all these compromises that we have to make in life. Yeah. And I really think like none of them are healthy. And that's why people form so much resentment, and people form so much, and they make so many assumptions,
Resentment is such a fascinating emotion.
Yeah.
Because what is resentment at its core? It's unmet needs that have just not been vocalized.
Yeah.
Like, when we feel resentment towards another person, it's because our needs, our desires, like really fundamental needs or desires that we, for whatever reason, didn't have the balls or the courage to vocalize, are just sitting, like festering and growing. Yeah.
And like back to that definition of the self, it's like, okay, you ask people what it means to practice self-care, or you ask people what it means to put yourself first, and you realize what they're describing is just to succumb to whatever whim they have today. Self-care is go and getting an ice cream. Self-care is taking yourself to get an expensive spa. All of those things could potentially be self-care, but I think what your real definition of self should be is what is best for me in the long term, right? It's not what I want today. It's not what'll scratch that itch today, meet that craving today. It's when I look back on my life holistically, what was the best thing for myself? Is that going to get an ice cream? Is that spending $500 on a spa date? I don't know. But my point is that when I listen to people talk about like self-care or putting themselves first, I see them describing succumbing to the whims of the moment, and I don't see them subscribing to optimizing themselves in the long term, thinking about themselves holistically. And we always make this joke about like people who go out and buy like Louis Vuitton belts when they have holes in their underwear. And it's like, that's an example of the fucked up kind of self-care. That's like having a commodity fetish. That's just going out and doing something to flood yourself with dopamine in the meantime. But maybe doing something like, I don't know, getting a new piece of furniture for your home, or like redoing the floors in your home, that's something that might holistically make you happier. That's an act of self-care that you're really thinking about, who am I today? Who am I tomorrow? Who am I a year from now? And what is that person going to find joy in? What is that person going to find fulfillment in? And I think that self-care is a really beautiful thing, but it's been so bastardized by just commodity fetishization and just rampant individualism that no one is actually doing things that are good for themselves in the holistic definition of me, or the holistic definition of I. They're doing things that are good for who am I today? Who do I want to fuck today? What do I want to eat today? What do I want to... That's what they're really doing. And I don't even think that's properly selfish. I think that that's like the really, really short-sighted version of selfishness. And I think truly what it is that short-sighted selfishness is bad, but long-term selfishness might be good because you'll become a better person that could become more useful to others. What are your thoughts?
I actually think two things. If you ask the average person, why haven't you killed yourself? Like, why do you wake up in the morning and go on? You know, people will answer with, I like being alive. I like it here. Yeah, I have my bad days, but like overall, I like it here. And then you ask them, well, why do you like it here? And then they say, well, like, I like pursuing happiness, or I like being happy. Then you ask them, well, what makes you happy? And most people will tell you that happiness comes from the satisfaction of their desires. When I have a desire and then I satisfy that desire, then that makes me happy. When I have a need and then I satisfy the need, then that makes me happy. What that stems from is a fundamental misunderstanding of what it is that actually makes us feel fulfilled, which is actually not the satisfaction of desires. It's improving ourselves.
Yeah.
It's just, and in any way, it could be like becoming a more emotionally mature person.
Yeah.
The thing about the satisfaction of desires is that not all your desires are for your benefit. Some of them are, but most of them aren't. You have the desire to satisfy your sweet tooth. So you go and buy a box of brownies.
Right.
You satisfied that desire, but if you were to do that every time you had that desire, would you not just have diabetes?
Right.
Did that like actually improve
And is
your
that
life?
self-love? Is that self-care?
Is
you don't have a foot.
You know? Yeah, and so I think what people always pursue happiness in the context of satisfaction of desires, but I really do think, and I don't even really believe in happiness or this nebulous idea of happiness, but I really do think fulfillment just comes from looking at who you were a year ago and then looking at who you are today and being like, I'm a better bitch.
Right.
Still trash, but I'm a better bitch.
Yeah.
And the reason we stay on this treadmill of satisfying desire after desire after desire is because we're trying to gain the fulfillment of self-improvement through the satisfaction of desire. But every time we look at who we were a year ago, somehow we're worse and we don't understand why.
Yeah.
When we've spent all this time satisfying our desire.
Yeah.
It's like you pursued your dream career.
Yeah.
You got the money that you wanted, you got your dream body, you got all these things that you desired.
Right.
But they didn't make you better people.
Right.
They didn't make you a better person.
Yeah.
They didn't improve you in any way that you want to improve upon.
Yeah.
And so when you look at who you were a year ago and you look at who you are now, you've done all these things, but somehow you're worse and now you feel worse.
Someone asked me something that made me spiral the other day.
Yeah.
Because, like, me, I'm like an anarcho-commie cuck. I want to share everything. I believe everyone should get. But I was talking to my friend who's like way more conservative. And he said something to me that kind of made me spiral, where he was like, look back at your life and think about the people that brought the best out of you. Were they people that were these selfless, sharing is caring, everything should be, or were they people who were like hard asses? And it's interesting because I have examples of both. I have like people in my life who they gave me a really soft form of love and direction, and that made me feel really safe and confident.
Yeah.
And then I also look back at like basketball coaches I had, and they were such hard asses.
Yeah.
And that really brought the best out of me.
Yeah.
Like I had this coach, his name was Sam. And every Sunday we would practice at Wingate Park in Brooklyn. And anytime we did something wrong, we'd have to just do like 20 laps around the park. And he wouldn't allow us to eat anything. And he would just allow us to drink lemon water.
Wow.
He was the hardest coach I've ever had. And okay, maybe that's abuse. I think that's kind of child. I think I'm describing child abuse.
Yes.
But what I'm trying to say is that he really did bring the best. Like I had a bunch of basketball coaches in my life. Only he got me to perfect my jump shot. Only he got me to get my stamina up. And I think that there's something to be said about the selfish people. Not because they're inherently good, but because they actually sometimes bring the best out of you.
Yeah.
And sometimes being this very nurturing, comforting figure in someone's life is very enabling.
Yeah.
And I really think it's the difference between mom love and dad love.
Yeah.
I think like
unconditional love.
Not to like gender essentialize or whatever, but like the maternal energy in whoever, I think is that really nurturing, caring. Doesn't matter that you win, it just matters that you tried.
Yeah.
When you're crying, you have a soft shoulder to cry on. And then dad love is like real conditional.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, son, did you win?
Yeah.
All right, I don't really care until you win.
Yeah.
And it's like something about the balance of those two forces are really important, because I think people think that you have to be a hard ass, and that shit does not work on certain people.
Yeah.
Like, we've had this problem in our relationship where it's like tough love does not work on you.
Yeah.
It does not do anything for you.
Love. Yeah.
Tough love really works on me. When people are very forgiving and nurturing and understanding with me, I become very complacent and very lazy. And when someone is a hard ass with me, I step my shit the fuck up.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, maybe that's gendered, I don't know. I think it more has to do with people on an individual level. But there's something about the balance of those two things. I think you might need very selfish, nurturing people that prioritize sharing, and then very selfish, hard-nosed assholes who just fucking get to it. You know, and then they have to exist synergetically.
No, I absolutely. So maternal love is unconditional love, and paternal love is conditional.
Yeah.
And from the perspective of like child development, for the first few years of your life, you need a lot of maternal love in order for your brain to develop in a healthy and functional way. The reason for this is because when you're fresh out the womb, you need safety, you need comfort, you need stability. You know, you need the structures of maternal unconditional love in order for your brain to mature and develop in a way that is healthy. Once you've moved past that stage,
then dad can
you
step.
now, yes, but really though, now that your brain has the foundations of what it needs in order for you to be a healthy, mentally and emotionally healthy adult. Once you've moved past that stage, you need the conditional love.
Yeah.
In order to make you now a competent and useful person.
Yeah.
So unconditional love provides a foundation of stability and safety and comfort through which your brain can develop into something that is healthy, that can now handle the conditional love that comes from the paternal side.
Absolutely.
And I think what happens, because we live in such an unbalanced and patriarchal society, is that a lot of people don't get the foundational maternal unconditional love that they need. They really grow up with this sort of neurochemical imbalance where they're really not very emotionally healthy. They don't have like a stable sense of self. They don't have a trust in themselves and of the world. They don't trust that they are safe. They didn't have the foundation of unconditional love that their brain desperately needed when they were a baby. I think what happens when you live in a world as patriarchal as the one that we do live in is that you hop out the womb and it's immediately conditional love. It's immediately. And so we grow up to be these insecure adults, these adults that don't feel safe in our own bodies, in our minds, that don't trust ourselves, that don't feel stable ever, that always constantly feel like the ground is shifting. And what kind of person does that make you into, you know?
Absolutely.
And so many of us have that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people also have the opposite, where you only got maternal unconditional love. Yeah. And you didn't get the paternal conditional love. And by the way, I'm not like making this gendered. I don't mean like only a mother can.
They're abstract ideas.
Love.
Big.
I'm talking about like the abstract idea of maternal love and paternal love. It can be from any gender. I don't care. Gender's not real and it's a spectrum. I don't care. Yeah. But when you grow up with one and not the other, if you grow up with too much patriarchal love, or if you grow up with too much matriarchal love, then you just don't become a balanced person. Yeah. And you don't become a mentally or emotionally healthy person. Yeah. And I also think that leads to a lot of extremes. Why people are such extremely selfish people, or just extremely selfless people pleasers. Yeah. I do think it stems from that. It stems from an imbalance that happened in childhood.
You know, it's really interesting. I was talking to one of my guy friends about this, and we were talking about, as you get older and older, and society progresses, and women are now demanding like basic reciprocity and respect. Yeah. And you're trying to navigate dating and love and romance. As you get older and older as a man, you just find yourself getting more and more resentful towards your father because he didn't teach you anything.
Oh, Oh, wow.
And I was telling you about this point this
Interesting.
woman made the other day. The reason why cis-het relationships aren't working is because men are looking for their mothers and women would rather die than end up like their mothers. So men are looking for the benevolent housewife that just does all the domestic labor, does all this shit,
Yeah.
brings them the food. That's their definition of a good woman. And then women grew up watching their mothers suffer, and their mission statement is saying, I am not going to end up like my mom.
Absolutely.
So both people are looking for polar opposite things.
Absolutely.
And when I'm in a fight and I don't know how to handle my emotions and I get angry and I get really fucking mad at like the male figures in my life because I just realized they didn't teach me fucking anything. And even when I was trying to give you these examples of like, all right, who really brought the best out of me in life? You look at men's role models and it's football coaches. What do they do?
You know what
Scream.
I was gonna say?
It's military sergeants.
Yeah.
What do they do? Scream.
Yeah.
As a man, you look back at these people that were supposed to be teaching you things, and you realize all they fucking taught you is how to yell.
Yes. Yeah.
That's all they ever, and it sucks. You have to reparent yourself. You have to start from scratch, and like, as a guy, and like, oh, boo-hoo, whatever. But like, that's the thing that we're struggling with.
Yeah.
Like, no one really taught us anything.
Absolutely.
Our dads taught us how to scream and how to be anxious avoidant and how to avoid confrontation.
Yeah.
And they didn't actually teach us anything, you know?
Yeah.
So like, it's really difficult to navigate this shit as an adult when you don't really have a positive reference point.
Yeah, it's something I noticed living in America is that I find that a lot of American men are raised by rappers, like just celebrities.
Tragic.
Like what I found living in America is that a lot of American men are raised by media personalities and celebrities.
Yeah.
So a lot of Black American men are raised by rappers. Like Jay-Z is your dad.
Yeah.
Like you listen to Jay-Z and you listen to his albums, and those you internalize those as your philosophies.
Yeah.
You model his behavior. You look at J. Cole.
Yeah.
And you just have to wonder, well, like, where is your dad? Why didn't your dad parent? And then it's also the same because I look at how obsessed Americans are with celebrities.
Yeah.
And it's because, in my opinion, that Americans just don't have parents in the home. So you look for parenting.
Fathers spend an hour a week with their kids. We said it the other episode.
Yeah.
You're completely right.
So many women are parented by Cardi B because, you know, your mom is too busy working.
Right.
You know, like capitalism took her out of the home. Capitalism took your dad out of the home. And so I find that the obsession with celebrity that even England has, I find like British people have this too.
Yeah.
Is so much caused by a lack of parental love in the home. And so you look for guidance in media personalities.
Yeah.
Because that is the only thing bigger than you. Those are the only people bigger than you.
What you're talking about, it was a really heated debate online the other day. Because someone tweeted, listen, it's the left's fault for the rise of Andrew Tate, because you can't just not give any advice to men at all and then not expect for them to look for that in figures that are actively providing it. So it's not that like Andrew Tate advice, Jordan Peterson advice doesn't suck. It's just they're the only people giving advice to men. And then this woman replied to this tweet like, I teach my sons every single day to be nice to women. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's the only advice you give your sons. You don't teach them how to deal with their emotions. You don't teach them how to deal with their anger. You don't teach them how to deal with confrontation. You don't. And the truth is that when you don't give someone advice, they will find it from worse people. And I think that a big part of how insane men have gotten, it's really just because no one has really been treating them as like emotional entities, as people that really need counseling and direction on how to deal with emotion and the advice is just be nice to women, which is a good piece of advice. And then there also needs to be like 80 other pieces of advice. It's like if you think that is the only direction that young men need, you are delusional. Yeah. And like then they look for that in Andrew Tate, they look for that in Jordan, they look for that in people actually offering it. And then that advice is terrible. But the truth is like people need role models. They need representation. They need people to tell them how to deal with their emotions, how to deal with feeling overwhelmed, how to deal with feeling emasculated, how to deal with. And then you don't teach people that, and then you just tell them, no, just be nice to women. And then they end up incels because that's not real advice.
No, that's absolutely so true. And you know, there's this assumption that like, you know, women, we're taught to manage our emotions better. And I just don't think that's the case. I think we're all trash. We're just trash in different ways, you know? Like,
Explain.
I think that we all learn how to regulate and manage our emotions by watching our parents model their own emotional regulation and management.
Yeah.
And so if you grew up in a home where every time your parents fought, they would scream at each other, then you're going to grow up and think that that is how emotions should be expressed. Or like if you grow up in a home where one person gives the other the silent treatment, or one person just gets really, really anxious every time, you know, something goes wrong, you are going to internalize that way of emotional regulation and management. And then you have to wait until you're fucking 30 and you can afford therapy to unlearn all of that so you can actually learn how to regulate your nervous system. It's just, we were being led by the blind, all of us.
Yeah.
It's just one blind man leading another blind man.
Absolutely.
And that's what I really feel like the state of parenting was.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, it's even worse for people who grew up in abusive households. You know, violence begets violence. If you grew up in a home where your dad hit your mom, and like, you know, you're gonna think it's normal to hit your wife. Like, it's just what is familiar and what is normal to you. And so there's just so little healthy emotional regulation and management in the home that all of us were just, or most of us, we're just like led astray.
I have this friend who also Jamaican. I don't know. Jamaican men, we're not known for our emotional intelligence, you know? And his son is 5, and his son is at the age where like yelling has stopped working. And he was telling me like, I don't know what to do with this kid. I keep yelling. I don't want to hit him. He doesn't believe in that. But like raising his voice no longer works. And you reach that moment with a kid. Like I remember I was like 12 and like beating stopped working and my mom just stopped because she realized that like, oh, like this isn't, he's not scared of this anymore. When the kid's like, just whip me. That's when you know it's like over. So now that yelling has stopped working, he gets so mad at his dad because it's like, you didn't teach me anything else. I don't actually know how to be a disciplinarian in any other way but yelling because you never, and now I have my son and he's fine, and it's like, who the fuck am I supposed to look to for this advice? No one taught me how to do this. And you know, we're all just kind of dropped in this world and we're just all told to figure it out.
It's such a scam. And it's really interesting because like what I found is that just like learning how to breathe regulates your nervous system, and then like you can regulate your emotions more. But it's like, I'm 29 and I just learned that like a year ago.
The amount of mistakes I made in my early 20s because I didn't breathe. No, honestly.
It's just really like and I don't know where, I don't know. I heard someone say the other day that the reason that people yell when they get angry is not necessarily because they don't feel they're being heard, is because there's so much distance between them and the other. In the same way that
wow, that's fire.
In the same way that like I guess Americans don't do this, but here in South Africa, if my neighbor's down there down the street, I'm gonna be like, hey! So it's because they're far away.
Right.
And when you feel distant
you yell
from someone, you yell in an attempt for them.
That's very true.
In an attempt to get your message because you feel so far away from them. And I think there just is a lot of yelling generally in our culture when it comes to like conflict resolution. Because there's so much distance between us, like as people. So many of us just aren't sharing realities. Like so many of us just aren't here, like together, like in the same realm. And we just end up yelling. And of course that doesn't work because, you know.
It's funny that we like started this conversation talking about self-care and then ended up here because like when I talk about like holistically making yourself a better person, this is the work. Like this is the actual, it's not fucking buying yourself a bag. It's like doing this type of shit, like actually figuring out who fucked you up, when they fucked you up, and how to fix it. And kind of like taking account of, and that's not fun. It's not really as fun as a spa date. It's not really as fun as getting your nails done. But holistically, you like will look back on your life and you'll be like, oh, that was actually what I needed to do. That was actually like becoming more selfish, becoming more, was actually interrogating yourself more, being more accountable for yourself. And that's sort of like the positive version of selfishness because you are thinking about yourself. You know? I have this friend, and he said something funny where it's like, my favorite part of self-hating is the self.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
a version of focusing on yourself that's really bad that we actually associate with humility, like self-deprecation. We associate that with like, oh, that's probably a real self-aware, down-to-earth guy.
Yeah.
It's like if someone's shitting on themselves all day, that means that they're thinking about themselves.
Something else, you know, that I find very interesting too, is that I do kind of think, as much as liberals and the left really idealize the idea of like this selfless person, I'll let these people go past. As much as liberals and like people on the left, you know, we really idealize just this idea of like the selfless person. I also think it's unreasonable.
Explain.
Just on a purely neurochemical level.
Yeah.
I was reading this book called The Brain by a neuroscientist by the name of David Eagleman. And he was talking about this experiment that he did where, I forgot the name of it, but I'll look it up and then I'll put it in the description box.
Yeah.
But he's talking about this experiment where essentially when you look at an object, right? Not a human, but an object like a chair or a shoe or a rock, there's a certain part of your brain that lights up. When you look at another human, there's another part of your brain that lights up. So what they found was, when you put one person in a room, right, and you tell them to look at a rock, and you tell them to look at a chair, you tell them to look at a stone, you tell them to look at a flower, the part of the brain that lights up when you look at objects lights up. When you tell that same person to look at someone inside of their tribe, a part of the brain that lights up when you look at a human lights up. But when you tell that same person to look at a human outside of their tribe, the part of the brain that lights up when you look at an object is the part that lights up. So we are not neurobiologically designed to give a fuck about people outside of our tribes. There were no exceptions in this experiment.
Yeah.
If you took a Christian and you had them look at a Muslim, or vice versa, the part of the brain that would light up when they look at each other is the object part. We are not neurobiologically designed to humanize people outside of our tribe.
Literally.
And so it is unreasonable to expect us to do that on a huge mass societal level. It's just, it doesn't happen.
There's this book called Moral Tribalism by the head of philosophy at Harvard, Joshua Green, and his point is exactly what you're saying. But his point is that from an evo-psych perspective, the modern conservatives we see today, the hyper-isolationists, the hyper-nationalists, the people who are always fearful of immigrants, are less evolved cognitively. They are more close to the caveman brain of us and them, and anytime I see them, I'm assuming they're here to kill me.
No, it's
you know?
when you see
and,
them.
And there are people who are just naturally more wired like that.
Yeah.
And there are people who are naturally less wired like that. And it's a bit of a generalization, but like I think he's kind of onto something.
No, absolutely.
Because why are there just certain people that when they just see someone a little different than them, they're like, I don't know. I don't trust it.
We should kill.
And
no, absolutely. It's, you know, we always ask, why are white people like that? How could white people lynch us? How could you hang a black person on a tree? Do you not see the humanity?
They didn't.
The answer is no.
They saw a shoe.
They saw an object, and we can prove it with neuroscience.
Right.
It has been neurochemically proven.
Yeah.
That white people do not see us as humans.
But all people.
Black people, we don't see them as humans. We don't. It's just what it is. And really, unless you grew up in a multicultural city,
those are words.
But you know, like, if you maybe were born, and this is also a maybe.
Yeah.
You know, if you were born in New York, and you know, like, you grew up on a block, and your next door neighbor was Latina, and your next neighbor was Chinese, and you have that to a lesser extent because you still consider those people part of your tribe.
Yeah.
Because that's what you. But if you grew up in a homogenous place.
Yeah.
If you just grew up in your one village or your one town where all of you are white or all of you are black or all of you are Muslim, your brain is designed to view people that are not that as objects.
Absolutely.
And it sucks, okay?
But
no one wants to hear
right.
that you're just a monkey that cannot humanize that, but that's what you are.
Right.
And I think we can only evolve past these constructs of racism and misogyny once we accept that we are not wired and designed to humanize each other.
It's 100% true, and this is why it's really funny that people view self-care or self-development as something that is comforting. It's something that is relaxing.
Yeah.
It's something that doesn't challenge you. When anything that would actually improve your fucking life would be something that challenges you. It would be leaving your cushy little homogenous country and go living with some people with a different fucking skin color. Like, the things that would actually aid in your psychological and emotional and physical development are not going to the spa. It would be going to South Sudan. But because you're not going to do that, we convince ourselves that going to... And by the way, I'm being facetious. I know that taking care of yourself is a very important part of life. But if you really want to develop, if you really want to challenge yourself, deal with your internalized racism, internalized misogyny, whatever it is you want to get better at, you would have to challenge yourself. If you're a man who's inherently tends towards misogyny, you'd have to like just surround yourself with women for like a year to like actually realize like, oh, they're actually like people with feelings and families.
Absolutely.
And like, that's something that I think is really sad about like the modern self-care, self-love thing, where none of it is actually about development. It's about catharsis and comfort.
It's about the satisfaction of desires.
Yeah.
Let's round this up. What, in your opinion, is a selfish way of existing that has improved your life or the life of other people? What is an example of being selfish that has actually benefited you or the people around you?
Oh man, let me think. So like in music, I started off as a producer. You know? And as a producer, you're inherently sort of taught that your goal in life is to sort of create this magic and just give it to other people. Because I'm not good enough to execute it myself. I'm not the celebrity. I'm not cute. I don't have all the pizzazz. And your job is to give that to other people. And I think you just really end up shortchanging yourself because the idea never actually gets to become the best version of itself. Because sometimes it has to be executed by you. And it's sort of like the Kanye thing, like, you know, I'm rapping over beats they were supposed to buy. I guess I'm getting high off my own supply. It's like, sometimes you should get high off your own supply. Sometimes it doesn't matter if you have the best voice or if you're the prettiest person. Your ideas should really belong to you sometimes because they are meant to be executed by you. And in my life, I spent the first part of my music career just kind of creating beats, giving them to other people, and I was always a bit dissatisfied because they never cared about them as much as me. They never spent as much time as I would have spent writing to them. They never spent as much time executing them and working on the music video as I would have done. And sometime around 20, I just said, fuck that. Like, I'm tired of sending these rappers my beats for $20 on PayPal. I'm tired of always being dissatisfied in the way things come out. I'm not the best singer. I'm not the best performer. I'm not the best artist, but let me give this a chance. And me singing over my own music is probably the most impactful and important decision I made in my career. And I would have never done that if I didn't decide to be a little more selfish. And like allow myself to get high off my own supply. You know? And like believe that, hey, I might not have the best voice or I might not have the best stage presence, but I care the most. And I think sometimes in life, choosing to execute something not because you're the best or not because you're the most competent, but because you care the most, because it's your baby, can seem selfish in the moment, but really that was just the right thing to do, you know? The things that you hold very dear, that you just know that no one else is gonna really care about as much as you, are the things that you should be selfish about. And for me, that was like music. Now I do not make beats for other people. And I haven't done it for 5 years and I don't regret a second of it.
Absolutely.
It's a complete waste of my time. What about you?
No, I've been more selfish with my time the older I get. And because I'm a recovering people pleaser, it has meant just saying no to people more. Something we were talking about resentment at the beginning of the episode, and you know, when I first got really depressed, I lost a really close friend of mine because she was like, I don't want any sad friends. And I really resented her for that because I felt like, well, when you were sad, I was always there for you. Like, I was always... And now I'm a bit older and I'm like, well, she didn't necessarily owe me that. Like, you know, like, she had every right to be like, yeah, I don't want sad friends. And I also now also feel that like I have every right to not want the particular type of friend. You know, like I would always feel bad for not wanting to be friends with someone that I find unpleasant for whatever reason. And like I would always try to make friendships work because I didn't want to feel bad, or I didn't want to feel like I didn't want to make someone feel rejected. I didn't want to make someone feel. I used to be so bad. Like in my early 20s, I would go on pity dates.
You're telling me that.
Like,
what is that? Explain what a pity date is.
It's like, okay, I know that, let's say Joshua.
Pity pussy?
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. But if I know that Joshua likes me.
Yeah.
And he's a nice guy. You know, he's not a psychopath.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy. He's chivalrous. He's kind. But I'm not interested. Like, I'm not. I would genuinely feel bad because I didn't want to, like, hurt his feelings by rejecting him.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, I'll take him. I'll go on a date with this guy. You know? And it's like, I did that once with this Italian guy. And it wasn't because he's Italian, but, like, he was the opposite of like anyone I would ever be interested in. I didn't find him funny. I didn't find him smart. I didn't find him interesting. But he was fine.
Yeah.
He was a nice person. He's kind. You know, he treats his mother well. He opens the door. He paid on the first date. You know, like he's fine. But it's like, I'm just not
it's
interested.
it's not doing anything.
But I went on a date with him anyway. And yeah, now I would never do that now. Now I'm just like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Thanks. I just used to conflate rejecting someone with like being a bad person. And I think on some level I felt that I didn't deserve to have boundaries.
Yeah.
Like on some level I felt like other people's feelings are more important than mine.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, wait, but why should they be? It's also like people are adults, they can handle rejection. That's really something I had to learn in my 20s. Like, adults can and if you can't handle rejection, that's also not my problem. The fuck does that have to do with me?
I think when you're young and you're idealistic and you want to love everyone and save the whole world, you forget that, hey, I am a person in this world.
Yeah.
So why am I treating myself like trash?
Like an exception.
You know?
Yeah.
You know?
And I think the reason I felt so resentful towards my friend is because I would have never done that to someone because I always felt that other people's feelings were more important than mine. So the idea that she put her feelings before mine, I was so... But there's a narcissism and egoism in that.
Of course.
You know, expecting that I'm owed that. And, you know, like we reconnected and we talked it over and I don't harbor any bad feelings towards this person. Like, we are perfectly fine now. But I also told her, like, yeah, I'm like, honestly, like, friendship for me is like way lower on my priority list because I know how little you are owed in friendship. And I do kind of like relationships that tend towards the heavier side. I'm just like not interested. You know, I'm more comfortable telling people now, like, there's nothing wrong with you, but I don't want to be your friend because I'm a lot less interested in the construct of friendship than you are, and B, I don't think you're interesting. I don't think it.
And like, we all deserve that.
And everyone deserve. It's, you know, it's that how I really feel now is like you deserve to not like people.
Yes.
And people deserve to not like you. It is okay to not be liked. And it is okay to not like other people. You are not a bad person because you don't like. It's also that I always felt that in order to justify not liking someone, you had to have a really good reason.
Because I don't like.
So you know, just like I don't
like your voice. I don't like.
That's something I had to learn from Mango.
Yeah.
Mango will meet someone and just be like, I don't fuck with this person.
Yeah.
She won't give me a reason. She'll just be like, I want this bitch out of the house right now. And yo, I really respect her for that.
Yeah.
She doesn't feel the need to justify who she is. to justify her emotions. She's just like, this is how I feel, and it's valid. Because I feel it. Because I feel it, it is valid. Because I don't like this person. I don't need a reason. And I just also think sometimes there's no chemistry between you and someone else. Like, just who they are fundamentally on an unchangeable level. I remember, I stayed friends with this person who in the end threatened to kill me and my family because, truly, she was mentally ill though. And all of her friends abandoned her, and I was the last person standing because I really felt like I had a moral duty to like be there for her.
And then she threatened to kill you and your family.
She threatened to kill me and my family, and that's when I was like, why do I feel that I need to? Why couldn't I have cut her off? Because I had a bad feeling about her. Because I did. And so
it sucks. It's really hard to find the balance because when you are a deeply empathetic person, and I hate when people say that. I'm like, I'm an empath. But when you just feel, you're very sensitive.
Yeah.
You do just think like, damn, if this person falls through the cracks and I don't take care of them, who will?
Yeah.
And it's really difficult, but you have to set boundaries. You can't also allow yourself to fall through the cracks. Then you can't help anyone.
Yes.
And that's the real fundamental struggle of life. Trying to figure out to what extent should I be selfless and to what extent should I be selfish. Because I think in order to have integrity, you have to be a little bit selfish. If you accommodate to anyone in the room, you are nobody. It's like Malcolm X, you stand for nothing, you fall for anything.
Absolutely.
You have to have enough self-interest to be honest. You can't be with one friend who's talking shit about your other friend. When you're with them, you agree. When you're the other one, you don't. You cannot be like that. You're a fake person. And you're a coward. So you have to be selfish enough to get out of that realm of cowardice, but selfless enough to avoid narcissism. And that is the sweet spot. And it's difficult to find, but that's the thing that everyone should work towards.
No, absolutely. And I think where I'm at now is that I remind myself, when I'm having that existential question of like, to what extent should I be selfish or selfless? Because I tend towards the selflessness, I always have to stop and be like, are you gonna resent this person? Because if you are going to end up resenting this person, then rather just set your boundary and go. Like, be selfish and go. It is always better to be selfish than to have resentment for someone. Because once the resentment builds up, you lose everything. You both lose that person, and you didn't honor yourself or your needs. So,
and it's very hard to. It's so much easier to maintain a relationship than fix it once it's broken. So like, years went by, and I ended up making up with that friend of mine who got cancer. They ended up beating the cancer. They're healthy now. I'm in my own place where I'm cool with where my career ended up. But that person will always symbolize resentment to me. So I'll never really be able to be as close to that person as I once was. And it's interesting that we should be cognizant of that because it'll make you so much more pressed to be honest in the moment. Because a lot of times we feel like even if a relationship breaks, we can fix it. But sometimes things have just been broken too much. You know? It's interesting.
So there we have it, guys. Selfishness versus selflessness. What do you think? Where on the spectrum do you fall? Are you too a recovering people pleaser? Or are you just a people pleaser? Are you a selfish person? If so, let us know and let us know how has that worked out for you. Do you like being selfish? Do you not like being selfish? Would you like to change this? Let us know.
Or if you're like, like a communist cuck like me who just always gives things to, how has that worked out for you?
Let us know. And we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye.
That was really good.
That was great. Love that.